Okay, perfect. Okay, I'll just do a little, we've been in my somatic school modules, we've been doing this practice called orientation, which is very simple. It's not even like, you don't need to close your eyes, you don't need to be transported anywhere else, because the whole purpose of it is just for your body, your nervous system, to know that it's right here, right now.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
cool.
If you just get comfortable in your seat, and the whole point is ease. So you don't need to sit up straight. You don't need to do anything in particular. Whatever feels easy. If it feels easy for you to get up and move around, that's totally fine too. So whenever you've reached just a point of ease, just allow the eyes to just find a spot in the room around you, anywhere they fall. And then just allow them to drift wherever they want to. So see if you can remove the consciousness out of your eyesight. There's no need to move your head, no need to decide where to look next, but just to allow the eyes to drift. And if they find a spot that's pleasing to the eye for whatever reason, or if they just want to rest, just allow them to rest there. And then when they want to move, you can move. And just allow the environment around you, the room around you, to exist as it is right now. Allow it to communicate with your body the way it communicates right now, the colors, the shapes. And then bring in sound. Allow sound to just communicate with you, however it needs to communicate. They don't have to be nice noises. They don't have to be enjoyable or pleasurable. It's just whatever is right in your environment right now. Allow it to meet you. And then invite touch. Whatever is touching you right now, the clothes around you, the seat beneath you. Allow that to exist. And as you allow what is to exist, see if you can orientate yourself slightly towards pleasure. So if you noticed anything that was pleasing to the eye, or you noticed a sound that was pleasing, or a touch that was enjoyable, just bring in the sensations of that. Notice what is pleasurable about it. Whenever you're ready, whenever it stops being pleasurable, or whenever the sensation moves on, allow it to drift away. And then you can orientate yourself to this screen, to me, to this voice, to this moment. There you go.
Thank you. That was lovely.
It's nice, isn't it? Because it just removes the doing out of meditation or visualization. And I always do find that after an orientation practice, there is a calmness. There's a calmness that's present, that's there, that wasn't there previously, despite the fact that you haven't created calm. Your nervous system has just gone, oh, here I am.
Yeah, like tapping into what's already here rather than trying to cultivate something or create something. I love that.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, how's the course going? Are you enjoying it?
Yes. Yeah, I love it. It's hard in terms of time wise. learning wise, I've been out of a school-based environment for such a long time that it feels really strange to have to show up for something at specific times and then move through like a format, a structure that's taught. And because most of the things that I've studied over the last couple of years have been self-taught, or at least like self-led in terms of when and where you do the learning.
Yeah.
And so this is a little strange to have to be like, okay, it's class time now, show up at school.
Oh, nice though. Nice to have that like structure around it and someone else like guiding the learning, like being like, here's what's next. Like, imagine that's quite relaxing for your nervous system rather than just, I can learn anything and in any way, anytime.
Yeah. And you know what? I probably would have drifted away from it by now. I know that's one of my toxic traits as a human, is I start something and then I move away from it, or it never quite reaches a completion point. And so it does feel really nourishing to be doing something that I know I'm going to get to the end to because I have to. So
yeah,
reassuring.
So good. I love it. Well, shall we talk about just what's present for us this week? Just whatever is coming up, no agenda.
Absolutely.
Just whatever's there. Do you already have something?
Well, my voice is taken up the first 5 minutes of this. So why don't we go for you first? Is there anything that's present for you right now that you want to speak out loud?
Yeah, so I've been working on my website, and as you know, every time I change, grow, learn something new, there is the outward manifestation of a new website, which I still don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, because it means I've had 5 websites in 5 years, which
that also means you've had 5 manifestations of yourself, which is quite interesting.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. But and that's such a beautiful thing to see, because I've been feeling like it's okay if this website's like not the final expression, but I also have a sense that I'm going to feel less desire to change it with new realizations because of the way I've been writing it and building it this time. I think in the past it's been, okay, let me just try and describe through this website what I've learned, who I am in this time. And you know, what I'm seeing more and more clearly is that I'm always going to change. Like, that's always going to change. And so the website, if it's an expression of that, then the website is always going to need to change to reflect it. So this time I'm doing it quite differently, and I'm not really writing in the way that I have before. And what I'm noticing with that is the patterning and the conditioning, and like, I already know that I want to write it in a particular way that's different to how I've done before, but I find myself like falling into these learned patterns, behaviors, ways of writing, and it's wild. It's been wild to watch that. It's been wild to watch how, like, consciously I know I want to do it a different way, but yet there is this seemingly uncontrollable part of me that is writing in ways that I've been taught, and it's crazy to witness.
Do you feel it in the moment? Like, do you only notice it after you've written it, where you're like, oh, this came from something that I don't want to be working from anymore? Or can you feel it as the words are coming out?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both, interestingly. So there's been moments where I'll write something and it'll flow out, and I'll be like, oh, that felt really good, because there was a sense of flow, there was a sense of it just happening, me not trying to, you know, me not sitting there going, right, I've got to write this page now. There's just the flow of the words being typed. But then I might go back and look at it a day or two later and see the evidence of the old story in
Yeah.
it, in just little bits of it, like not necessarily the whole thing, but just a particular word or a particular sentence that is structured in a way that feels like the old way. But other times, yes, it's as it's happening, and that's the weirdest sensation, because it feels like, well, I think we all have, don't we, that sense of control. Like when we're typing something, there's a feeling of, I'm typing this, I'm in control of what's being written here.
Yeah.
And so it's like, the only way I can describe it, and I think it sounds kind of weird, is like it almost feels like it starts in my forearms and comes up through my fingers and is just happening autonomously. And then I'm like, oh, no, this is not what I want. Delete, delete, delete. And I'm like back in control. And it's so strange.
So if that's the case, is it coming from the act? Like it's coming from the thing that you're creating, almost being transported up through your fingertips into you, rather than coming from yourself?
Yeah, I think it's like, I think there's like a dual direction happening there. Like it's both coming from outside and conditioned inside. And I think it's interesting that it seems to start in my forearms, because that's how I know it's not necessarily of me. I feel like I've been shedding this layer, and it's like it's at my forearms now. Rather than
Hoodie is like hanging by the sleeves.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's so interesting because do feel like I've been taking this big layer off recently. So to have that visual of like, oh, it's all the way down in the middle of my forearms now, like I'm really ready to take it fully off, and just seeing it come out through the writing is a good indication for me to slow down a little bit, to go, oh, maybe there's more space required before I write this. Maybe maybe there's just a little bit more awareness, a little bit more attention on taking this off before I write.
Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's fully possible?
I mean, I don't know. I think that some of the stuff that comes in, so just to make it a bit more real and give some examples of what I'm talking about here, the old character, the old way, the old learning was about, talking about people's businesses and talking about what can we do here now in order to affect or change the future, right?
Creating the business of your dreams, create
the life you love, create what you desire, manifest. It's all of that kind of stuff. And I've said from the very beginning of my business journey that I believe that there's nothing about people that needs fixing. Like, I don't believe people need fixing. And yet, even though that's true, what was coming out in writing, in marketing, on websites was the opposite to that, was words that pointed to people do need something needs to change. Yeah, there's a problem to be solved, there's a resolution to be found. And it's really sticky, like it's really, really sticky in my writing. So
because I think that's all the marketing we see.
Yeah,
there's no other, because I know exactly what you mean, and I've tried to think about doing it myself. I'm not at the point where I'm really marketing myself in any way at the moment, but when I try to think of the alternative, when I think about, okay, well, how do we talk about business, or how do we market ourselves from a place of the opposite of that? It's almost like there's nothing quite there. It's not, like it doesn't quite know how to express itself in me. Like, I know the flavor of it, I know the tone, I know what I want, but when it actually comes to the physical writing of those things, in the creation of a headline or whatever, boom, straight back into the old tactics, straight back into like, there's a problem, we need to fix this, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I was thinking, like, where did this come from? And firstly, I traced back, the first 2 to 3 years of my business. I spent many hours, downloading freebies, sales page templates, watching webinars, doing courses, all of that
Yeah.
research, hundreds of hours probably in that world. But I also think, like what you're saying, it comes before that. It comes just from seeing marketing and being subjected to it my entire life.
Yeah. Do you know, just to pause for 1 second there, I had the realization yesterday. I was deleting a few or removing a few Instagram people who I follow, and was just doing a little pruning of the Instagram feed, and I realized, because I was about to delete a load of people from school who I don't speak to anymore, and I was like, I'll just unfollow these people. And then I realized, as I was scrolling through the list, if I unfollow those people, everyone I follow is selling something. And it might be selling something that I like, it might be selling something beautiful, or it might be photography that I really appreciate, but they're still selling something. And that means that every time I'm on Instagram, every single photo or post or story that I see is somehow marketing to me. Even subliminally, it's coming through. And I was just, I kind of had a moment like, whoa, everything.
Yeah, because the impact of that, right? Like the brain must process that in a particular way of like, oh, there's things we need, we're not quite enough, it's really it relies upon that belief of like not quite being enough, or something being able to be improved, doesn't it?
And a long time ago, I thought I'd solved it by removing the people who I didn't feel good about following, that I didn't feel like their marketing was aligned with the way that I want to be marketed to. But I don't think I really realized that even the people who I like to follow are still, like, even if I'm never going to buy anything, I'm still taking in marketing constantly.
Yes, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, on my Instagram feed, what I've noticed is I'm starting to resonate more and follow people who are sharing more educational content, and that is landing a lot nicer in my system. And I think it's because they're using their wisdom, their research, the time they've invested in learning as their marketing, like, rather than, oh, I've got this thing, it's behind a locked door though, like you need to pay me to get it, and then unless you get it, you're not good enough, so like the educational stuff's a really interesting sort of potential way that I'm seeing of another option. But yeah, it's wild, isn't it? And I was getting to the point, so as I've been moving through all this and realizing these things even more deeply, and trying to write my website with this lens, or with the lens removed, should I say, I was thinking, well, okay, but if I'm existing as a business, where I'm saying there's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing you need to fix, there's nothing that I have that you don't already know, then what is my business? What am I selling? And the place I got to with that inquiry was, I'm selling space, I'm selling time, I'm selling reflection, I'm selling great questions being asked, I'm selling a space for conversation to happen. And I was like, yes, let's focus on what's actually happening in a coaching conversation in the moment, right? Rather than what does coaching lead you to? What are the outcomes? And so I'm really shifting out of this, and it's so weird, isn't it, to talk about coaching in a way that isn't results focused or goal oriented, because that's kind of the whole premise, right?
That's the model, that's the reason for the industry, it's root, it's reason. And
yeah,
yeah, I think it's time to give it another reason to exist. I guess it's the kind of difference between maybe selling or marketing a yoga studio versus marketing yoga clothing or yoga blocks or a mat or something like that, or even yoga as a fitness exercise. You know, you're kind of like, it's detaching from the materialism of the activity and instead selling, this is the space, this is the people, this is the feeling you have when you're here.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? And I think what's interesting for me is that as I talk more about the experience, as I talk more about, you know, how it feels to be really deeply listened to, how it feels to be reflected back and to be present, deeply heard within a space. You know, I think that the people that are attracted to the work will probably change, because in the past, it's almost like I've been like, well, let me talk about the result in order to, you know, galvanize a response. So people come into the coaching and then they have the experience that I'm actually really excited about. And, you know, I do think that, you know, being heard, hearing what you really feel like with someone, you know, without an agenda, without an opinion, it is powerful. It does create great results. Change does happen, but that, I want to kind of take the focus away from the results and onto the process. So it's been really interesting trying to write from this place and like seeing quite how deep that conditioning goes of the other way. But I do.
Sorry, you carry on.
I was going to say, I do think there is like a movement. I do think there's sort of a shift, a new breed of coaches, healers, therapists, that sort of thing, who are moving into this kind of space. And I think that's really exciting for me.
Yeah. One of the I was a little nervous actually when starting the somatic coach certification, because I was really nervous that going into another coaching certification would be about, would teach me more of the coaching that I was already rejecting. But they said something in our very first module that was just almost like, it was said as an instruction, like a taught thing, but very casually. And it's really stuck out for me, is that saying something as a coach, saying something is always the second option. And the first option is just to shut the fuck up and not say anything, to just hold the space, to step back, and to keep that distance between you and the client, so that the client can find their own thing, can find the next thing that they want to say or that they want to take themselves into. And it's so nourishing to me, because it takes away the responsibility. Well, there's a big responsibility on a coach to hold that space, but it takes away the fact that, like, I as a coach am meant to know something that the other person doesn't, because I do not. Do, like, there's just no way. There's especially no way that I can say anything that is going to tell them something that they didn't already know better than they could tell themselves, you know? And it's just such a more nourishing space, such a more beautiful relationship between coach and client, because there's no like teacher student, you know, reliance.
I think that's so interesting, because I totally agree. And it feels like what you're talking about is less agenda, like less of the coach needing something from the client. And I think the word responsibility is really interesting, because I totally agree with you. Like, of course, there's responsibility to hold the space, to structure the session, to create that environment. But in my opinion, there's zero responsibility really on the coach for results or outcomes, because once you get into that, it becomes codependent, it becomes an agenda. It kind of ruins the magic of coaching for me to kind of put that on it. So
especially in a time frame like especially if they say, oh, we're going to achieve these results within 1 month of working together or within one session. It's just astounding to me that that's even used as a promise.
Yeah. And I guess this is leading me to an interesting question. Like, do you think that society values actual coaching? You know, do you think society values space with another human, being heard, being taken more deeply into your own truth? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I always think currently within our current boundaries of society, within the current way that it's set up, it will always fall behind the alternative method, the alternative way of coaching, the conditioned way of marketing that we were just talking about. It will lose out and it will seem less magnetic and less aspirational because it doesn't fit the current setup, which is good. I want to move away from the current setup, but then I have to acknowledge that it might mean that I have less clients, or it might mean that for the time that we're in these societal brackets that I have to accept that maybe I won't have these ridiculous 10k months or any of this stuff that doesn't actually mean anything to me anymore, but it might. I have to remove that. I have to take that away as an option, and not necessarily as a result, you know, it's not meaning that I'm going to be broke for my whole life, but it does mean that that's not the way that I want to market myself, that's not the way I want to coach, and so I'm not going to put myself in the ring with the people who do. I have to have my own ring, which can be a little lonely, but that's why it helps to have friends like you who are also in their own ring with me.
And I do have a sense that there will be a shift. I think there will always be the selling of money and success and, you know, whatever else it is, as a idea of freedom, you know, because really that's how I see it, right? I see like, okay, there's like the sugar-free freedom, or there's like the full fat freedom. And, you know, sugar-free is like, the 10k months, the this somehow perfect body, the relationship, the house, the whatever it might be. But I know people who have all of that and are unhappy, and then you know, that isn't fulfilling in the way that they thought it would be. So I think almost over time, as more people reach those outcomes and see that that's not the answer, then maybe there'll be a shift that way as well. So maybe that is maybe those things are actually leading to their own demise in that way.
maybe I do wonder though, because I think on an individual level, I think if you truly experience it, if you truly experience what it feels to be in a space that's held by another person from that perspective, I almost said from our perspective, and I don't want to make it like an us and them situation, because instead to me it feels like, okay, they're perfect, they're doing their own thing, that way of marketing is thoroughly effective, and that's the kind of business that they want to have. And it doesn't actually mean that they're not an effective coach.
Agreed.
It just means that it's not the way that I want to get my business. Like I think we spoke about months and months ago now, and I have to keep reminding myself of this analogy of, yes, I could make loads of money printing loads of paper and selling loads of paper to loads of people that need paper, and I could be very successful at selling paper, and in the process I have to chop down forest upon forest upon forest but you know what? I grew those trees so I can chop them down. For me, it's not worth it to keep growing the trees and keep chopping them down just to keep making the money to make the paper, or to keep making the paper to make the money. For me, I would rather not make paper, not make loads of money, and instead just I've lost my analogy. I can't round it off in a pretty bow, but that I can just do it a different way. That's my doorbell. Pause the recording. Yes, it's just not worth it to hurt the environment for me. It's just not worth it. And for some people, and even this is the way that sustainability is going now, right? Where as long as you grow more trees, it's all right to chop them down. And to me, that feels like it's still problematic. It's still the exact same thing. Like, we have to stop cutting down the trees. Just like, no matter if we plant more, it's still like, it's a whole massive conversation, that. But
yeah, no, I agree with you though. It's like I had this line come through in my head. It was months ago now, and it was the ends don't justify the means.
Yeah.
And you know, I was at one point operating my business as if the ends did justify the means. Is it, well, let me just do this because then people will come and do this work, and then I'll do the work I really want to do with them. And you know, and that was like, oh, but it's okay because once they get in, it'll be fine. It's like, actually, no, that's not okay to me. And I was kind of, you know, bolstered along in that belief by people who say things like, sell them what they think they want and then give them what they actually need once they're in. And I can't subscribe to that anymore, because I understand and I know that everyone who becomes a coach has good intentions. I believe that completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not? Like, of course, if you come into this type of work, you care about people and you want to help people. So, but that just, it's not true. Like, it doesn't sit right, because what about all the people who never come in and experience the true result and just feed off of the messaging and believe that to be the truth? And that's really damaging. So yeah, this website it's bringing up a whole load of stuff. It's taking forever. It's been on maintenance mode for so long, and there's like a little bit of me sometimes it's like, come on, and I'm like, no, because that's the same voice. The voice that's like, come on, is the same one as the one who writes from my forearms. So do you have anything else you want to share on that before I ask you what's present for you right now?
I mean, there's a million things I could say, but right now, no, I think I'm good.
Yeah, me too. That was so great. Thank you. What's present for you right now?
Okay. Well, so the module that we did, this is basically now becoming marketing for the somatic school, which by the way is great. But the module that we did was called Breath and Voice. And it was a module that was, surprisingly enough, based around breath and voice, about using your voice in different ways, about using breath in different ways, about the connection between the whole of your body, your voice, and not just like breath work. Like when I've experienced breath work before, it's been very intense and very very emotionally charged, and the breathing was very labored, very controlled, very repetitive, structured. And this wasn't at all that. It was just about awareness of breath and just about how we're breathing all the time and what that means, how it affects us, blah, blah, blah. And it was amazing. The whole weekend was great. But one of the things, and actually this has come up again as we have been talking about recording and then coming into this session today, is just how much weight, how much resistance, how emotionally charged it is to use my voice. Like I even feel it, because I work from home, so I'm often on my own, and I do tend to make noises a lot, or I'll talk to a dog, or I'll, just say things out loud. I'll hum along little tunes, but there's something about saying something official, saying something real aloud in a space, even if you're the only one who can hear it. We had to learn a piece. We had to learn a poem or a song or just anything that we could use to like practice with our voice over the weekend. And I chose a amazing poem by a wonderful poet called Joy Sullivan. She is on Instagram. I love her. She's brilliant. But the first time I practiced on my own in my house with no one home, not even a dog, not even an animal, I was the only person who could hear me. It was terrifying. It was terrifying to actually allow my voice to come out of myself. And I'm so interested by where that comes from. I can feel kind of intuitively that there's an attachment there around what it's like to speak out as a woman, and to the millions of ways that voices have been written off or struck down or cancelled or anything over decades and centuries, basically. But it's so interesting to see it actually occur when I try to use my own voice. It's so interesting.
Wow, gosh, there's so much richness to this, right? Because we could go in so many directions with this conversation, but just curious, because this is what it sparked within me. Did you do any like drama stuff as a kid?
I did, actually. Yeah, I did. I actually did drama as an A-level, and I did it at uni. I did English and drama studies at uni.
Did you? I did not know that. How fascinating. Because I was thinking when you were saying that, like one of the things I noticed is I was a lot more confident as a kid. Like I used to go to like a Saturday drama club thing, and we would put on these performances and things, and it was celebrated to project your voice. Like you were being taught how to really take up space, hold the room with your voice, and being celebrated for it. And that was I think a really great thing for me as a kid. But I think when I think about it from today and like how different I feel than I did as a kid in that, on that stage, I think cancel culture does play a big part of that. And that's interesting, right? Because to me, what that's saying is what you say today is a static belief or a static perspective that you hold. And I just don't believe that. Buddhism tells us everything is impermanent, everything changes all the time. And that's so true. Something I say today, I could disagree within an hour, let alone 5 years. So it's fascinating.
It's so huge. And funnily enough, even though I did drama at uni, I think I actually lost that ability to be to hold that confidence before I even finished the course. Like I moved through the course, I went more into backstage, and I did lighting, I did sound, and I didn't plan it that way. Throughout my A-levels, I was doing performances. I ended up actually doing my final dissertation for drama on video art installations, so like totally removed from acting. And so I lost it. I lost that ability. And at school during my A-levels, I was fine with performing, and younger than that I was definitely fine with performing. In fact, I was quite a dramatic child.
Same.
But it just, whether it was expectation, whether it was kind of becoming, because I think that sort of age, like 18, you start to like actually feel like an individual. up until then, you're still moving through the school system. When you go to uni, at least, I know you didn't, but you moved away at kind of that similar age as well, didn't you? So
Yeah.
as you do that, you have to find your own individuality. You have to take care of yourself a lot more. And with that comes expectations, you have to stand in yourself. You have to say, this is who I am. This is the things that I like and that I believe. So I wonder if that's, that weight, that decision, that we have to make at that time, the process of stepping into ourselves, we rub up on the edges and we think, oh God, I can't do that. I can't, like, if I'm to stand in myself, I can't possibly stand with that, with that, like, confidence or with that energy. I just can't do it. So I think, I lost it then. And now, as things become immortalized online, which they are, it's scary that you can't even delete something. You can't, even if you do change your mind about something, if you're deleted, people can still find it. It's still there. It still gets, and there's nothing, that aside from some photos of myself on my Facebook that I've probably taken at uni when I was on the toilet or something. What do I think is going to be there? But it's terrifying that it can happen, that your voice is immortalized, and you actually, even if you have changed your mind, it's still there. It's just scary. There's a lot more weight now behind what you say, and having to really think through every single word, every single thing that you put out, which I think is destroying the ability we have to just say something without thought. I think, it's said to, it's one of those cliches that adults always say to children, think before you speak. Actually, oh my gosh, I wish I didn't think so much before I spoke.
Yeah, me too. And I think this is why, like, this is so fun for us, just to have a recorded conversation with no agenda, with no, we can just go anywhere with it. Anything can be said. We're not going to edit it after. So
no.
This is a fun practice to kind of be rebellious, I guess, in that way of having to control and manipulate what you're saying in order to be safe, accepted, belong, liked. But there's something coming up for me around this conversation about accountability versus like responsibility, because I feel like this may be a controversial statement, but see, the precursor's coming, because I'm like, people might not like this. I have a real deeply held belief that someone's actions, behaviors, words must make total sense for that being. Like, even when someone's saying something that seems terrible to you, right? The fact that they're saying it means that for whatever reason, it's right for them. Like, it makes sense for them to say that based on their lives, who they are. And so I'm like, it's really difficult to say, to then kind of villainize, if that's a word, that person, because it makes sense. It must do, because they wouldn't be saying it otherwise.
If I or you lived their exact life, we would say the exact same thing. And so then I think that these people can be accountable for that. They can see, oh, I said this thing and perhaps it hurt people, and I can understand how I came to be saying that. And so there is like an accountability there. But I think when we make someone like bad for what they're saying, like, that's a big problem for me. I'm so against cancel culture for this reason, because people are saying what makes sense to them. So even if it doesn't make sense to you, that's because of your differences. So it's only going to take us further apart. It's only going to separate us even more to have this kind of culture. But I already think it's dying out a little bit. I already think there's a bit of a rebellion against it that I'm seeing anyway. Yes, I do agree. I do agree that there is Do I think it's already dying out? I do, because I think there are enough people who are saying, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I would even want to use the word humane. It's not humane to just chuck someone out of society because they said a wrong thing. But I don't know whether the charge behind our current, the charge behind that, because even speaking out against cancel culture is said incredibly, it's said with weight, and it's said with strongly. And it's that sort of pressured belief system. It's that where like even people who are anti-cancel culture are anti-cancel culture with their entire being. There's no room for disbelief, that there's no room for movement. And so I think it's almost part of the same thread, just another strand. And yes, like it's better because it's not saying, okay, let's chuck everyone outside when they do a wrong thing. But is it going to end up any differently? I'm not sure. And I don't know what the answer is in that case.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting one. And from my perspective, I think if people are scared to speak, no progress can be made.
No.
Like we have to be able to, it has to be safe to say these things out loud, because once you say them, then there's the opportunity, then there's the openness for a different perspective, then there's listening and understanding and reforming ideas. And if people are scared to speak, what that means to me is that they stay stuck and rooted in their own beliefs. They just keep them a secret, and that's even worse to me. So
I completely agree. And I think there's this, we talk about negative beliefs as being, that we want to remove ourselves from them, that we want to create an attachment from our negative beliefs. And therefore, I think we have to do the same thing with our positive beliefs. Everything that we think, that we believe so righteously, and that this is the right way to live, it's the right way to create a society, it's the right way to coach, it's the right way to, I have to hold that lightly too. I have to say, I probably don't know. I probably that belief might change. And that is confronting, because we want to believe that we're doing the right thing, and that we're believing the right things, that our beliefs can be solid. But when you were talking about on your Instagram stories, was it yesterday or the day before, about how, say in your own words, do you know what I'm referring to?
The suffering.
But someone commented, replied to one of your stories, and you were just like, okay, it might not be that story, but then it's no story. You can explain better in your own words.
So the person sent me a lovely DM saying, I've found that I can reduce my because the precursor to this is, I was saying suffering's part of life. You can't get rid of suffering, and trying to get rid of suffering is a fruitless task that just stresses you out even more. So you can just accept that suffering's part of life, and that actually brings you into a state of peace anyway. So that was the precursor. And the person said, I feel like I can reduce my suffering by seeing these stories that I have and questioning them and breaking them down. And I agree that there can be some relief in that. I've definitely spent a period of time, many years in my life, like combing, analyzing all of my beliefs, all of my stories, and doing all of that work on them. But the way I described it was it's like the arcade game whack-a-mole, right? You knock one story down, another one pops up. It's never ending. You're just there like bam, 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 I'm killing it with all these stories. You do that your whole life. And that takes so much time. It takes so much energy. Sometimes giving the attention to those stories, in my opinion, actually strengthens them. makes them even more real, makes them even more painful.
Yeah.
So we can actually just go, well, what even are all these stories like? I'm just going to, these are just stories, they're just things that arise.
Yeah.
So rather than sort of getting so attached to having to be perfect, I think is where that comes from, having to be free of all story. And I think as humans, like, it's just not a thing. We can't do that.
Yeah, it's not a thing. It can't be a thing. Yeah, and the same therefore rings true for beliefs. Beliefs are changing, ever evolving.
All the time.
So therefore there is no right belief that we can hold. There is no right thing that we can believe. And imagine a space, we said, how can things change, or how can we reach a coming together of people with different beliefs? And the only way potentially we could is for all of those people to sit in a room and not believe, and know that the things that they believe are not the be all, they're not the end all, they are, they're unattached, and therefore conversation can occur, and sharing can occur, and connection and collaboration, because each belief is not held as correct.
Yes, and I think, like, without getting too wild here and like too blown out, I mean, if we think about it, every single war that the world has ever had is about opposing beliefs, right? Like, every single war starts with, I believe this and you believe that, and I think you're wrong, and I'm willing to fight you to the death for it. Like, attaching to beliefs that strongly creates so much pain. And I agree with you. And I think that when we're deeply connected to our beliefs and we're holding on to them really strongly, bluntly, that's just the ego. Like, that is all it is. Even the beliefs that seem good, even the like holier than thou beliefs, is still ego, because it's saying, like, I know,
the desire for the creation of a better world is saying, I, as an ego, as a person, can create a better world. It's
not to open the floodgates into a whole other conversation, but I saw this a lot in the vegan community. Where I went vegan for 3 years. I was really, really ill. I just can't be a vegan. I have to eat meat. My body is poorly when I go vegan, no matter what supplements, all this. I did everything I could. And, saw it so much in that community of like, we are right. We are right. And there's no other option. I'm unwilling to hear it. And, actually there's a lot of yes ands to that conversation. So I think if I imagine a peaceful world, what I imagine is we all acknowledge that our beliefs and our thoughts and our ways of being are as a result of the life that this body mind has had. And then there can be compassion, there can be understanding.
And valid.
And valid.
Therefore they're valid, because the experience that's true, it's a life that's lived.
Couldn't be any other way. And yet there can still be respect, love, friendship, connection, even if we believe different things as a result of our experiences. So interesting. We've solved it. Well, peace right there.
Done, checked. 1 hour. God, what are these people waiting for? joking. That's the thing. I think it's so interesting that you can start from one place. You can start by questioning, okay, how does it feel to speak aloud in an empty room? And you can end up in, what's the reason for war? God, it's just I love conversations that can take these twists and turns.
Me too, so much. And I guess that can only happen, right, with that openness. That can only happen with just an unattachment to any one thing. Cool. That feels like a natural completion for me. Is there anything else that you feel like you want to share before we stop recording?
I do not. I think that feels complete for me too.
All right, thank you.